So today's lesson is on multiplying and dividing algebraic fractions. If we've got a fraction that looks like this with some algebraic terms on the top and bottom, we can identify that x minus 4 is on the top and the bottom, so we can cancel those out. We also can note that there's an integer cancellation that can happen here, because if we look at 3 over 6 as a fraction, we know that we can cancel that down to 1 over 2, and so here we've got 3 as a coefficient and 6 as a coefficient. We can also cancel that down to 1 over 2, and so we get as an answer, after we've simplified everything, x plus 2 is the only thing left on the top, and 2 is what's left on the bottom. So that's our simplification. Let's have a look at another example problem. We might have something like 20 minus 5x on the top, all over 8 minus 2x. How are we going to cancel this down? Well, let's start by taking out the highest common factor. Let's identify that our top we can take out 5, and that turns into 5 lots of 4 minus x. And on the bottom we can take out a common factor of 2, and that also leaves us with 4 minus x. So we can realize that we've now got the same term on the top and the bottom. We can cancel it out, and that gives us an answer of 5 over 2. If this could simplify further, we could do that, but in this case we can't, so that's an acceptable answer. In a more complex case, we might have something that looks like a more complex factorization, x squared minus 4 all over x plus 2. So we're using those factorization skills we've worked on earlier in the unit. We're going to factorize that top line, and we know through difference of two squares that becomes x plus 2 lots of x minus 2. That's the factorization of x squared minus 4, and that's all over x plus 2, and we can then identify we have the same term on the top as we do on the bottom, so we can cancel it out, and that gives us x minus 2 as an answer. That's all the stuff we covered last week. I'm about to go on and do some more advanced skills, but if you would like to pause it there and practice some of last week's skills from the warm-up activities that are listed down below, then you're more than welcome to pause, do some warm-ups, revise that stuff before we move on to a little bit trickier stuff. What today's topic actually is multiplication and division. So what happens if we have some fraction? Let's have a look at something like 3 lots of x minus 1 all over x plus 2. It should be obvious that this thing will not cancel. There are no like terms there. There is nothing that we can cancel. But what happens if we want to multiply that with another fraction? 4 lots of x plus 2 all over 9 lots of x minus 1 lots of x minus 7. It should be obvious that if we use our primary school multiplication method, which is numerator times the numerator, denominator times the denominator, we're going to get into some fairly difficult multiplication. We're going to have a cubic on the bottom and a quadratic on the top. It's going to get quite nasty. What I'm talking about there is, let's go back to grade 7 when we did things like what is 3/7 multiplied by 4/9. If we want to know what 3/7 multiplied by 4/9 is, then 3 times 4 is 12, and 7 times 9 is 63. And we can cancel that down because we know that 3 goes into both of them, and so we'll get an answer of 4 over 63 divided by 3 is 21. We could, by the way, you should know this from year 7 as well, we could, by the way, have cancelled down before we got there, because we could have done this cancellation, and that would have made the operation much simpler, because we would have been doing 1 times 4 over 7 times 3. That obviously gives us the same answer as 4 over 21. So even back in grade 7, you were taught that doing this sort of cancelling before we do the multiplication makes life easier. Exactly the same skill is going to happen now. So let's go back up and have a look at the question that was posed to us. I'm going to just get rid of those arrows. This is what we're trying to tackle. Doing the numerator times the denominator, the two numerators multiplied together divided by the two denominators multiplied together will be reasonably long and complex, but it should be reasonably easy if we can cancel out things first. And you'll notice here we've got a numerator on this side cancelling out with a denominator on that side. We've got a numerator on this side cancelling out with a denominator on that side. What do we have left? Before I even do that, notice my coefficients. I've got a 3 and a 9 there, so I can cancel out the 3 with a 1, cancel that out and then 9 becomes a 3. That gives me, what do I have on the top? Well, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone. I'm left with 4. What do I have on the bottom? Well, that's gone, and left a 3. That's gone, and we've got x minus 7. So I get 3 lots of x minus 7. That's all I have to do. You can see that there's very little actual multiplication happening there. We're not using box method for multiplication. We're not doing any other tricks. We're just quite simply cancelling out all those things so we don't have to multiply. This topic is also covering division, so let's have a chat about a division question. You may remember from primary school that we did something, if we're doing division, what is 3/7 divided by 9 over 14? How do we do that in grade 7? What we do is we recognise, well, we're dividing by a fraction, and so we're going to turn that into a multiplication of the reciprocal. What does that mean? That really means that we can do a 3 over 7 and we turn the divide into a multiply and multiply by the opposite fraction, the upside down fraction, which is what the reciprocal is. Now if we're doing this multiplication, we've essentially set up a problem very similar to the previous one where we can cross cancel 1 and 3, and that becomes a 1 and that can become a 2, and we get an answer of 2/3. That's how we do it in primary school. That's how we do it in grade 7. Let's have a look at what we're going to do with an algebraic fraction using those same skills. So this one's going to look reasonably complex, but you'll see once it's done, it's going to be very useful. X minus 3 lots of x plus 4 all over x lots of x plus 7. That fraction is going to get divided by 3 lots of x plus 4 all over x plus 7. How do we tackle this problem? Well, using the same skills we discussed up there for primary school, we can see we're dividing by a fraction, and so let's turn that into a multiplication of the upside down fraction. We'll turn that into a multiplication. We'll put our x plus 7 on the top, we'll put our 3 lots of x plus 4 on the bottom, and let's keep this fraction the same. X minus 3 lots of x plus 4 all over x lots of x plus 7. What can we cancel out here? We've got an x plus 7 on the top there, and on the bottom there we've got an x plus 4 and an x plus 4 down there, and that's all. There's nothing else we can cancel out. So on the top I've got an x minus 3, and on the bottom I've got a 3 and an x, so that's 3x, and that's the simplest that we can get to. So that's an example of all the skills that we're going to be practicing today. I'd like you to practice with the exercises that are given down below, and as per usual, if you've got any questions about anything you saw, you can of course go back and rewind the video and watch anything again, but also feel free to jump into any of the chat forums that we've got, the Google Hangout or the Google Meet, to have a talk to me and ask any questions. Good luck, and we'll chat soon. Bye.